Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good evening for those of you that are in the evening, and some of you joining us and you're in the morning. Good morning as well. Welcome to this webinar that is hosted by the IABC West Africa Interest Group. My name is Adedoyin Jayesimi, and I am a member of the IABC and also the co-founder of the Comms Avenue. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this 11th edition of our virtual talk series, which is powered by the IABC West Africa Interest Group. We've just finished showing our introductory video where you've seen some highlights about who we are as a professional association, but I'm just going to talk you through some more things you need to know. So the IABC is the International Association of Business Communicators, and it's a global network of communication professionals committed to improving organizational effectiveness through strategic communication. And the West African Interest Group is a member of the IABC Africa region, and it covers IABC members across the West African coast. And really, it's essentially a credible platform for networking, learning, thought leadership, mentoring, solving problems through strategic communication. And would like to invite you to be part of us. If you want to join us, there are many ways in which you can do that, but you can see on the screen the website for the membership. You can also connect with us on social media, and would love to engage with you further. Okay, so these are the details for joining. These are some of our team leads. It's a very, very robust and engaging community. So we look forward to welcoming you sometime soon, and please do connect with us. Okay, so let's get into the conversation of today. But before we do that, I would like to introduce the panelists that we have. Time will not permit me to read their very, very impressive profiles, but it will be displayed on the screen. The first person that I'm going to introduce is Bosco Anthony, who is the Head of Strategy and Growth at Global RevGen, GRG. Welcome, Bosco. Thank you so much for joining us today. Next person. Thank you. The next person I'm going to introduce is Queen Wabweze. She's the content head at WebWide Digital Marketing Agency. Thank you for joining us, Queen. We're glad to have you here. And then finally, I have Philip Odiakose, who is the Chief Analyst at P+ Measurement Services. Welcome, Philip. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay. So before we get into the conversation, the team would like to have a quick Zoom photograph before we start the conversation. So I'm going to hand over to the technical team now, and they will give us a go ahead on when we can proceed. So panelists, please smile. We want to look very nice. Okay. Technical team, are we good to go? I think we should be. Okay, I'm going to take that as a yes. Okay. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone, and welcome again. Please, if your colleague is not on this call, you need to send them the link. You need to tell them to join, because this is going to be an amazing conversation. I remember about this time last year, towards December, news broke about ChatGPT. And then every time you went on LinkedIn, it was like there was one article or the other telling us how ChatGPT was about to take over our jobs as communications professionals. And you began to wonder, is this really the end of the world? But what I found so interesting in the midst of all of the frenzy was how people began to use AI deliberately to enhance the work that they do. And the truth is that AI is not a new trend. It's not something that started last year or 2 years ago. It's been an evolving trend. And the same applies to the use of data in our work as communicators. And as transformational technology happens, or as technology begins to transform the way we work, how we collate data, how we interpret and analyze data, what's becoming apparent is that issues around ethics and privacy have now become very, very important considerations, not just for communications professionals, but also for the organizations as well. So this afternoon, our panelists are going to help us to better understand the ethical considerations in data-driven and AI-enhanced communication. It's a mouthful, but there are two important things that we need to bear in mind as communications professionals today. And with the insights and, of course, your contributions contribution. We hope that you will leave this webinar armed with information on how to responsibly leverage the use of data and AI-enhanced communication. Now, this is an interactive webinar, so please feel free to drop your comments. I'm already seeing some comments in the chat. Please do more of that and share your thoughts as the conversation goes along. But if you have questions in the course of this conversation, please type them in the Q&A section, and you will see that any question you want to ask, please put it in the Q&A and we'll take them and have the panelists also respond to them. Okay, so moving now to my panelists, I'm going to start off by asking them to share their initial thoughts on the topic, and I will start with Bosco. In 2 minutes or less, can you briefly share your thoughts on the topic of this webinar, especially in light of the fact that AI and the use of data has gained significant attention? Is this a passing trend, or is this something that organizations really need to take seriously?
I think organizations definitely need to take it seriously, because as much as it is a trend, it's not a fad. Machine learning has been here for a very long time. We as humans have labeled it as AI or artificial intelligence, but it's been going on for a very long time. If you think about even how Netflix picks your picks of shows on TV shows, it was machine learning. If you think about Spotify curating music, it was machine learning. If you think about speaking into a phone and then all of a sudden seeing ads for what you were speaking on, that's been going on for years. So at the end of the day, I believe that machine learning is actual intelligence that's evolving, and as humans, we have to evolve with how machines have evolved over the last few years.
Thank you. And I like how you gave us relatable examples, because we've seen it in Netflix, we've seen it in Spotify, we've seen it even in our everyday life, but we haven't really given it that tag of machine learning or artificial intelligence. Thank you so much. Philip, what about you? What are your initial thoughts? You're muted, Philip.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so for me, I think it's an increase in relying, organizations are beginning to increase their reliance on AI and also data-driven approach. And so bringing it down to the area of communication, I think it's beginning to increase. And for me, I think it's more about communicators putting in context the implication and also the application of AI in the course of the journey as well. And so for me, I think it's more about taking them seriously isn't just a trend. I think it's very necessary right now for organization and also communicator professionals to be able to remain competitive in the market, and as well as relevance as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Philip. I like that you highlighted it's not just about the application, but you're also looking at the implication and also how to use it for competitive advantage as well. Thank you very much. And Queen, please can you share your thoughts? You're muted too, Queen.
Sorry about that. AI has come to stay. Okay? It has come to stay, for real. So there's no way everyone in the communication industry, people in the PR, for instance, like us, we're using AI now. Just like you said at the initial, we thought it was going to rob us of all our jobs. But of course, it didn't do that. What it rather did was to enhance what we do. In fact, the coming of ChatGPT and other AIs that are emerging after 2021 actually made us better professionals. So it has come to stay. All what we are here to discuss today is now a responsible use of it. Okay, so it's not just about it coming to us and then we just gather all the jobs that we used to do and transfer to machine to start doing without that unique human touch. So it has come to stay, yes, but then we have to use it responsibly. Thank you, ma.
Thank you, Queen. I feel like we need a hashtag AI. Very fantastic. And you highlighted what is the foundation of this conversation that we're having, which is the responsible use of AI and data.
Correct.
So I'm going to come
That's
back
correct.
to Philip. Thank you so much, Queen. I'm going to come back to Philip and I'll ask you, what are the ethical considerations that we need to bear in mind while communicating with user data?
Thank you very much. So for me, I think the number one ethical consideration we should have as communicator and also in the use of AI, it's about consent, which is very important because users' information, users needs to be aware and not just being aware in terms of literacy, being aware about how their data is being used in the area of transparency. So I would give us a citation from the Facebook Cambridge Analytics. I think we all remember that where user data was harvested without consent and also used for political engagement. So I think it's very important. Number one, consent and also transparency. And so the second for me, it's about data security. So they need to be a very clear safeguard in terms of user data against breach of authorized access as well. That's very important. And also the place of accountability and compliance. I think I will refer to the case of Uber settlement. I don't know if you remember that 2016 and also being published by New York Times, I think 2018, when most of the drivers data also license were being breached, and I think Uber had to come a bit of settlement at that year as well. And so that was due to the inability for data consent, transparency, and also protection of the of customers and also end users data as well. So it's very important for us to put the transparency, consent, as well as accountability into action in terms of communication of users' data to avoid court cases as well as other breaches of rights of users' data as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I like acronyms, and as you were speaking, I just said CTA. So you're thinking consent, you're thinking transparency, and you're thinking accountability in your use of AI. Very, very important. Queen, I'm going to come to you because Philip has mentioned something that's really, really important with regards to privacy rights. You find that sometimes people are using data, they don't even understand the need to get consent. Like, why can't I use this information? So how should we handle user data to make sure that we're not infringing or breaching their privacy rights?
It is simple, very simple. Get their explicit consent. People's explicit consent should be gotten before you use that insight or personal information that they have. You see, in our industry, for instance, it's only should we say, a novice or a newbie in the industry who should just go online, start gathering people's emails, start gathering people's phone. Look at look at our LinkedIn, for instance. You have a lot of personal information there that when you gather them, you can really, really target these guys and then market to them. But is it really ethical? No. Explicit consent is very important. They are inbox away, DM away, even a phone call away. Get them to say, yes, I agree to this. You can use my data. You can use my personal information for this purpose. And that brings me to another point. Even when they have said, go ahead and use my email, send me e-newsletters, that still doesn't give you rights to get maybe their phone numbers and then you begin to send them SMS blasts. Okay? Simply because they gave you consent the other way. Fine. If, for instance, you were given both phone number and their email consent, that's also nice. Make sure that if it's, for instance, an SMS blast that you told them you were going to use that phone number for, please, they should not wake up one morning and see themselves added to a WhatsApp group. What would be the results? They will just live in droves. So it's very important that you get the explicit content and then use it for the purpose with which you told them you were going to use it. That way, you will be ethical yourself in the communications practice and any other industry you are engaging in. Then another point I want to talk about is this secure way that should we call it now apply some encryption method. When you gather this data, fine. Look at this word in the world of social media, for instance. Misinformation is everywhere. Fake news, that's of course what we're grappling with. And then you want to gather people's data. For instance, your what do they call it now? The journalist contacts, their data. How do you secure the data you get from your journal? That's talking about, in our job every day, you get details of journalists. How do you even keep them? Remember again that many persons who are working also have side gigs this time around. And do you just toss this data around that persons maybe in your unit get access to them, then gather them and begin to use it for their own personal businesses or side hustle? You have to have a secure way of keeping this data safe. That way, it doesn't just lie fallow, where even persons who are not supposed to have access to them, even right there in your unit. Okay, so get this data and then use it. If it's a encryption method, is everywhere. That way, you and only the person who sent it will have access and be privy to it. So don't just gather them and toss it
That's
around.
interesting. Queen, I'm going to come back to that, but I want to use something that I want Bosco to speak to very quickly.
Okay, great.
And on that conversation of ethics. Now, Bosco, we've heard Philip, we've heard Queen, and in my head, I'm thinking of a long list of, okay, do this, don't do that. How are we supposed to navigate making sure that we're not using data from our audience or our users unethically? Is there supposed to be a policy? Is there a manual? How do we navigate that?
It's a great question. And look, before I answer that question, the problem here is that it is being used unethically. And all we have to do is look at the research. I don't know if people know this, but the US Department of Justice and a group of 38 state attorney generals sued Google for monopolizing digital advertising technology. They accused the company of acquiring competitors, locking in clients with the platforms, and exploiting or distorting auction mechanisms for advertising. So this is an existing problem that exists at the highest framework. If all you have to do right now is Google lawsuits in the United States, and there's a problem. If you look at ChatGPT, they were also sued by a conglomerate of actors and authors and artists because their accreditations were taken by an AI engine and put in other people's searches with no accreditation to these authors. If you look at Sarah Silverman as an actress, she was one of many artists that basically said her writings were taken by ChatGPT and published with no accreditation. So this is an existing problem that is already going on. And there's so many different things that we need to look at. We need to look at audits on AI. We need to look at a robust training framework for both AI and humans to learn how to use AI. We need to look at explainable algorithms. We need to look at sensitive consumer analysis of how we're using data and how data is being shared. We need to look at more testing procedures. We need to look at ongoing monitoring. We need to look at how users are inputting information into prompts in AI. We need to look at diversity in teams. We need to look at new skill sets. So, we're talking about, this fear. I was listening to what Queen was saying about the fact that people had this fear that AI is going to take our jobs. Well, AI is creating new jobs, and AI has to create new ethical frameworks for us to use AI with care. So, there's a saying, AI will take away jobs. My honest belief is it's the people that know how to use AI that are going to replace the people that don't know how to use AI. And that's where we need to start, is creating an ethical framework. And it starts with these conversations.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we're already going into the AI enhanced communication part. I'm seeing a question already, and I'm seeing comments in the chat section. Shishala Bulu says, added to a WhatsApp group equals instant blocking. Yes, nobody likes to be intruded upon. So I'm going to come back to you, Bosco. And now that we're talking about AI, and we had touched on this a few days ago, is in terms of bias and the conversation about the information that these machines have already been fed. And then when you put certain keywords, they play to those existing stereotypes. So that's something that is beginning to emerge in the use of AI. So how can we ensure that AI is not discriminatory or biased, or doesn't continue to perpetuate these harmful stereotypes that us communication professionals are working hard to make sure that we change?
Is it me first or Queen? Who do you want to go first?
You must go.
All right, so look, I'm very lucky because I get to work with a company that uses AI, and it's a company called Quant Plus, and we basically are a world's first AI intelligence report that uses AI technology to inform how to shape a creative advertising before you spend your first dollar or your first currency. And so I started noticing that when AI was building these intelligence reports on creatives in different parts of the world in higher education, it favored fair skin tonality in creatives. So I wanted to do a little bit more digging because I was like, why is it that every country that AI is looking at creatives is favoring fair skin tonality over dark skin tonality? So I did some digging and I started contacting the universities and I asked them, I said, hey, why is it that you prefer a fair skinned model in your creative advertising? And they said, it's because we don't have the resources to hire international talent. We use a one size fits all model. So what we realized is that AI is studying human patterns, it's studying human behavior. And so because the humans were telling AI that, hey, because of a lack of resources, we are using fair skin tonality models in our creative advertising, guess what AI was doing? It was following those patterns. So when it comes to gender bias, when it comes to bias of skin tonality, we have to basically educate AI to look at other spectrums. So we started split testing darker skin models in our creative advertising. And guess what? We were getting better performance when we were using diversity and ethical different frames in those creative split testing. So what does that tell us about AI? AI doesn't need a master. AI needs a mother, and we need to teach AI to do better.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's really explicit in terms of just the disadvantages or the negative aspects of AI that we then need to be conscious about in our work. I'm going to quickly take this question from Amanda. I'm going to direct it to Philip. And she says, to what extent should a communication professional acknowledge that ChatGPT was used in the creation of content? I know a communications professional that uses it extensively in the content creation for a community newsletter. She provides the basic facts and ChatGPT writes the reports, leader articles, and the rest. We're beginning to see more of this come up in recent times.
Okay, so I think I need to hear the question again.
Okay, so to what extent should a communication professional acknowledge that they use ChatGPT in creating their content?
Okay. Okay, so for me, I think that shouldn't be an announcement. I think it's more about the individual, as rightly said by Bosco, and it's more about you as a communication professional being clear about your ethics. And so ethics do not need a a side person to always be with you and also be keeping you in terms of check. So ethics is an individual thing. So for me, I believe that in the course of using ChatGPT and other open AI resource, there's a clear need for you as a communication professional to bring in ethics, because you do not want to be found in the edge of plagiarism for your clients, and also for wherever you put in your piece or your content or newsletter for as well. So I think it's more about self-discipline. I would be very honest about that, because the presence of AI and ChatGPT is beginning to bring a lot of mental laziness for professionals, and now people no longer tend to take time to think. So why should I think when the resource it's also there? So that's a debate for another conversation. But for me, I think it's more about being ethical, which is very important in the use of AI. AI and ethics should go side by side and should be much more larger conversation as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Amanda, for asking that question and joining us today. Amanda is a member of the IEBC Africa board. She's a director of governance, so we appreciate her for being here. So let me go back to Queen. Queen, what are your thoughts about how we can avoid, the stereotypes, the bias that we're seeing AI coming up with in recent times?
I like to bring it home. Let's do home, like local. See, you just gave an example, very clear. And it is something that we see today, very common. There is need for that human oversight, that human review of every content that is generated. You do not say because you are expert in giving prompts, and they just put it in there, and then it generates a full-fledged newsletter for you, and you push it out. No, there is need that you take a look. Okay, let's even come back to our press releases, our social media updates. There are many persons, people who are into content like us. There's usually that temptation to quickly use ChatGPT or the likes to quickly create content and then push it out there. Press releases, for instance. Our press release, you know how weighty it is when it comes to leveraging it on our local media and even digital. Please do not use AI completely. There is that need that after you are done generating these contents, please come back, take a look, and begin to prune out anything that is discrimination. That's every whiff of stereotype, every whiff of discrimination. Look at us in Nigeria, for instance. We are cultural people, very culture-centric, very tribalistic, permit me. You don't want I think Hausa man to look at a content that is supposedly meant for him, and then you're referring to him, for instance, as Boko Haram. What about the Igbos? You know the names we give ourselves. That of the Yorubas, you want to see Omo Igbo, you want to see Omo Yoruba, and all that. Maybe not the way I'm saying it, but something that insinuates that kind of profiling of stereotypes. So it's only when you, as the human person, is able to look at the content you generated, whether you want to leverage as a press release, social media update, or blog post. You take a good look at it and then begin to expunge every whiff of those things. That way, we'll be able to have a responsible and ethical use of AI.
Thank you, Queen. And, as you're speaking, again, it's just emphasizing that as strategic communications professionals, we cannot outsource the strategic part of our work to AI. So AI just enhances and enables us to do what we do, but we can't fully outsource that strategic function to AI. Thank you so much. Now, Bosco, I'm going to come to you now. There's something that is now emerging in terms of we have enough data to begin to personalize our communication and our campaign. And if you look at PR trends for this year, for next year, personalization is big, and AI use of targeted data is going to allow that. But then the question is, how do you then balance the benefits of personalized communication with the potential of invasive targeting and privacy infringement?
Well, the challenge that we currently have is that there is an invasion of personalized data in advertising. We're having this conversation with Google and social media around the personal first-party data, as well as the collection of the cookie. And the cookie is basically, your personal data and first-party data integration and zero-party integration. So I think the reinvention of user data and how it is collected and what information is collected for advertising purpose needs to be reviewed. It needs to be ethically sourced, and it needs to be ethically stored. And more importantly, it then needs to be ethically transferred into a language that is non-invasive. And all of this is still trying to be figured out. A lot of the platforms currently have been given some time to change how they collect the cookie. So it'll be interesting to see how that translates in the future. But looking at it from not just a commercial perspective and looking at it from a personalized perspective, let's be honest, guys. AI is now studying human behavior and it's learning how to personalize in human behavior. And I'm going to give you a very smart example. I use a program called Superhuman, and Superhuman is an AI utility that manages your inbox and creates responses for you while you are away. Now, I globally speak around the world. I do a lot of conferences. I recently did a conference on the Gold Coast, and in 2 days, there was over 600 emails that hit my inbox. Superhuman sorted my inbox. Superhuman chose which emails needed responding. And then on my way back, when I was Ubering back home, I was on my phone and looking at all the drafts that were ready to be sent. Superhuman asked me, would you like me to craft this response in your tone of voice? So Superhuman not only studied my tone of voice, not only studied how it signed off my signature, it actually spoke in my voice. That is the power of where AI is moving towards. We're teaching AI not to just study patterns and algorithms. We're teaching AI how to study human behavior. That is the key part that we need to talk about today, is that we have a responsibility as marketing professionals and communicators, not only to figure out what is the right decision to make, but it goes back to teaching AI how you want AI to treat us as humans. That responsibility falls on us.
Wow, I don't know about anyone else, but that's equal parts exciting and then also scary. I feel like I need Superhuman for my email, but then I'm just thinking about the ramifications of it. Thank you so much for sharing that example. I'm sure a few of us would check out that tool after this webinar. Philip, I'm going to come to you before I see a lot of comments in the chat and I will take them. But Philip, I want us to go back to, you spoke about consent. What strategies should organizations adopt to ensure that their use of AI in communications respects that principle or the principles of informed consent?
Okay, thank you very much. So I would advise first. I think one of the key strategy I would prefer is the clear and accessible information. And so I would take some of this. I'll take a case from some of the fintech companies we have around, the likes of Paystack and Flutterwaves, which they currently offer transparent information in terms of data usage and also AI around their payments communication, and which is very, very important. Another I would take is the consent in terms of our local language. Being able to communicate the use and also consent of user data, also communicating user data by B corporation. So for example, I would state a case study for the likes of the telecom, MTN to be precise, which they are very big in terms of breaking down their user consent communication into various dialects to enable users to be able to understand that what their data is being used for, and that is also by collecting and also requesting for their consent at the same time. Then another, it's more about the NDPR, which is the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation as well, which they're beginning to put into content compliance. And so for me, I think that is a big one, and that is a wider conversation that should be held currently, because the use of AI as well as data in this climate should be a much more wider conversation in terms of government as well as regulation, because that is where ethics of AI and also consent, transparency, and use of data, it's been explained, and also being able to understand how that can be regulated. Just like what Bosco said initially, that whether we like it or not, we need to have a clear table where the ethics as well as the usage of AI data should be discussed in a more larger conversation, government precisely, because that is the direction we should be having right now, because that's the only way we can be able to have the right and also debated concept as well as usage for the right communication. And lastly, for me, I think it's more about awareness and communicate awareness as well, awareness and education, because without those two, every other conversations that we're having around ethics, transparency, and the rest of them is obviously not going to make a weight. People user needs to be aware as well as being educated by organizations as well as the various practice and NGOs and the need and also how and why their data is being used. And trust me, a lot of concept pages right now that people don't even read because it tends to be a lot lengthy, and at the end of the day, I for one am even guilty of some of those stuff, right? And so you just click because you are on the go of you just want to do what you need to do. Just tell me where to tick the box, right? And let me just tick the box and move. And so for me, I think a much more larger conversation in terms of concept and what you an implication of what your concept, the concept you're giving is actually going to bring to you. I think it should be a much more wider conversation, and I think the NITDA, they are actually doing. They're trying to do a great job in that area in collaboration with fintech companies as well to see that's the National Information Technology Technology Development Agency. They are doing some couple of collaborations with some tech, also fintech companies in Nigeria currently to see how they are going to be some bit of continuous education, public awareness, as well as programs to enlighten users and communicate to users the need for their data privacy and also the AI usage. Because just like what Queen mentioned earlier, people are more about what AI should do for them. I think that's more of the crusade we have right now. What AI could do and what it should do, but for me, I think is a much more larger conversation about what AI should not do, its implication, which we're also going to talk a bit much more when we go into the conversation, because that's the conversation we should be having. Because AI has come to stay, just like what my co-speakers have actually highlighted. It has actually come to stay and all that. So right now, we shouldn't even be bothered about what they are going to do because it keeps coming, right? And we should be paying much more attention to what it shouldn't be doing as where the ethics and every other aspect of it comes into play as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Philip. I like how you said we should also be paying attention to what it shouldn't be doing. Very, very important. And I'm just going to do a summary of what we've said so far. One thing that you said that really struck me is about those consent forms. They're actually really, really long. I don't know how many people here take the time to actually read them, but you're just pressing okay, yes, and you don't really know what it is that you are consenting to. So for organizations, there's also responsibility on their part as well. And what I hear from all our panelists saying is there also needs to be a deliberate internal policy within organizations that say, this is how we use data, this is how we're going to use AI, and constant training, because these are evolving technologies, right? So there needs to be constant training to say, these are the right methods or methodologies to adopt when handling data, when using AI, and then complying with the regulations that you have in your country. There's the General Data Protection Regulation at the moment, the GDPR. There's also the localized one. Is how are we as an organization complying to some of those things? I think that would help us to be in the right direction. So I just want to read a few comments in the chat. Camila says, in my humble opinion, if a communications professional uses ChatGPT or similar tool and doesn't make any changes at all to the output, they must make a disclaimer at the end of the content saying the content is powered by ChatGPT, for example. Then you're being transparent. Thank you for that, Camila. Emeka says, let's take the issue of plagiarism into account in the use of AI. I think it's so important because I saw a comment, somebody did a post on Instagram yesterday and she was saying she can tell when she gets an email or an invitation that has been written by AI, because they now all sound the same, all feel very robotic. And that's something that we're seeing. Adebanke says, we're not allowed to use ChatGPT until our L&D department gives a lecture on the ethical use of AI. That's really good. But if you use Microsoft tools, you are technically using AI, as they're infusing AI in different tools. That's so true. Okay. And AI is broader than ChatGPT. Yes, that's also very, very true. Okay, so I see a question here from Humphrey, and I'm going to direct it to Queen. And the question is, how do we go about introducing AI to the management of the organization that's yet to embrace AI technology?
Now long to know. Okay, that will be the job of the corporate comms, the IT unit. Okay, so organizations who are yet to embrace AI in there. Okay, there's this little research I did when I was trying to get insights of what successful organizations, successful brands online do differently, that the their brick and mortar counterparts are yet to jump on. Okay, and I found out that most of them do not even know how to jump on these things. Not because they're not succeeding online, not because they don't want to succeed, but because they don't know how. So I think it will start from the corporate comms unit, a conversation like this that we're having, and then their IT unit. Maybe you organize a knowledge sharing session, a KSA, and they begin to tell them the wonders, okay, that this new fashion can do. Okay, let them know that still bringing it down to our corporate comms in our strategic meetings and brainstorming. It's no longer those times where you need to wait and begin to brainstorm, trying to find out what is the strategy that will sell, what are my KPIs, what are this, what are that. AI is there to help. While the team is brainstorming, you bring in AI to also brainstorm, like you just bring it like superhuman, like Bosco said, bring it in, let it also contribute. Okay, there are areas where it will be very difficult for you to think at the moment, especially knowing that you have every other things to handle in the course of your job. So, but AI can help. Sorry for the noise background. So, but that is it. Let our corporate comms units, even the HR can jump on this too. Our IT units, let them begin to organize a knowledge sharing session and teach our own C-suites, because it all starts from there. Teach them that this thing is good for us, so we better just hop
Thank
on.
you, Queen. So essentially introduce it to them in doses so that they begin to see the use and the benefits. Because honestly, like we've said, AI is here to stay, and every organization needs to figure out how they're going to leverage and adapt it for their own activities. Thank you so much, Queen. If you're just joining us, we've been having a very, very enlightening conversation on the ethical considerations in data-driven and AI-enhanced communication. And I've been learning a lot. I believe everyone on the call has also been learning a lot. Now I'm going to go to Bosco. Still this conversation on ethics and the dilemma in using data, how we're going to use AI. Can you provide practical example of some ethical dilemmas in data-driven communication and how they were resolved? Maybe just one example so that we can see how this plays out in real time.
Well, the challenge is that the resolutions haven't been resolved peacefully. A lot of the resolutions have ended up in court. So, what I will say is that UNESCO has produced the first ever global standard on AI ethics. And the recommendation on the ethics of AI intelligence is adopted by over 193 member states, part of the UNESCO organization. And it's built on 4 pillars. It's built on human rights and human dignity, living peacefully, ensuring diversity and inclusiveness, and environment and ecosystem flourishing. So what gives me hope is that we are starting to see some frameworks to help us as guide rails moving forward. And if anyone is interested in seeing this UNESCO guidelines, I've just put it in the chat with a link to the direct UNESCO framework. There is going to be more other frameworks that we have to follow. The challenge that we have today is we have to choose to look at how we operate as a business and not pick profit as our guide rail. We have to pick people as our guide rail. When we put people first and we put profit second, that is where we start to resolve dilemmas and challenges. But there's a bigger conversation that needs to be had that no one is talking about, and that is the future of work. In the Western world, the 8-hour workday was created in the 1800 era when we were manufacturing cars. So if AI is here to stay, and if AI is going to make our jobs easier, as employers, are you going to pay your employees the same hours, 8-hour days, even though they're working for less time and becoming more productive? Or are you going to pay people less because that is what the profit margins tell us to do? No one's having that conversation right now, and we should be having that conversation. Just think, in a couple of years, humans may not have to work 8-hour workdays. They may not have to work 5-day work weeks. Maybe the weekend is going to look like 3-day weekends. But no one's asking the question, will my employer do what's right for me? Or will my employer do what's right for their profits?
Wow, thank you. I mean, I'm just nodding because that's a lot of food for thought. So it's not even just about now, it's how work is even emerging and evolving, and how that is also going to impact on the people, how that's also going to impact on how we use AI, how we use data. That's a lot of food for thought. Thank you so much for those insights. Philip, you had started to talk about regulation and saying that we need to broaden this conversation, right? And I'd like you to please speak to what policies or regulations that need to be in place to ensure ethical communication when using data and AI.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so for me, I would advise, which I've always done, it's to advise organizations to ensure that they have their internal ethical guidelines while waiting for the larger one from the government. So they should have integrate their ethical guidelines into their AI and data practice that aligns with communications and also with their technology potentials and also ethical considerations. So the need for this is to enable it will enable organizations and also Comstain to be able to light in and take the advantage of working or within a safe environment. Safe environment simply can be defined about ensuring that your communication, user data, as well as the AI tool being used within the organization, it's operating in an healthy environment. And just like what Queen rightly said, it is very key the place of human in all of these, and I also tie Bosco's input into that as well. The place of human and also the benefit of this and its implication of this to human should also be put into context for the bigger picture. That way, it's easier for organization to be able to practice ethically. I'll give an example. I think some organization, especially fintech companies right now, are beginning to integrate ethical guidelines into their process. And I think that enables their communication system. I think one of that has been implemented recently was that of Flutterwave, which they bring in an AI-powered payments communication system, and which is ensuring responsible technology use as well. And other fintech companies are beginning to take in line on that. Then another is to continuously audit that process. Is to continually audit that our ethical process, which has been put in line. Because why? What is healthy today might become obsolete tomorrow, and so there is a need for proper and continuous documentation and audit of the working document of that as well. And lastly, for me, it's more about, like I mentioned initially, it's continued training, awareness, education, because this needs to run across board, from HR down, from HR to the tech team, to comms, as well as to the CE and and the entire system. There must be a clear ethical awareness, education, as well as training on the use of the machine, as well as the data practice as well. Because why? Should one person go left, it's that one person is entirely bringing the entire organization down as well. And so I think some organizations are beginning to take on the leap on this. CC Hub, which we all know, they've been also been big in ensuring and also promoting responsible technology using their communication process, and some other organizations are also taking that into consideration. So for me, I think the need for clear education, training, awareness, which I tend to integrate in my entire communication, because this is the only item that will enable whatever conversation we're having today to become a working document and implementation. There needs to be continuous education in the bigger picture as well.
Thank you. You're giving us another acronym, ETA, Education, Training, and Awareness. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to go to the question section, and Daboni is asking, and Bosco, I'd like you to answer this, please. What role has IABC and other PR professional bodies such as CIPR, the NIPR, which is the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, taken in developing or leading AI ethical codes of conduct for its practitioners? So what role do they play in creating those codes of conduct?
Well, I think there's two things, right? There's the framework, and then there's the awareness and education piece that first needs to be introduced to the communication society. And I was one of the fortunate people that was selected from Australia to go speak on AI at the global conference in Toronto. That's actually where I met some of my esteemed colleagues from Nigeria. I'm originally from Tanzania, East Africa, and I got to meet a very strong African contingent in Toronto, which was a very proud moment for myself. But it allowed us to come together from different parts of the world to have a conversation about an ethical framework. So I believe IABC plays a big role because it is a heartbeat of events and communication utilities for people to come together. So I think it's something that needs to be growing, and it needs to be an equal opportunity. What I would like to see from IABC is that the global conferences are not only in North America, and we actually start to see more global conferences in Africa and in Australia and in other parts of the world, because let's be honest, some of the biggest emerging countries are not going to come from the West. The future of innovation is going to come from Africa, is going to come from Australia, is going to come from Asia. So I would like to challenge IABC to look broader and expand its horizons everywhere else in the world.
I say big yes to that. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to direct this question to Philip, and Ona is asking, how can college students be more ethical and responsible in their use of AI and online data? So in their assignments, project writing, knowing that they're less concerned about being ethical than those of us in the corporate world. And before you answer, I actually experienced this when I went to speak to the students in Accra that studying communications and public relations. And one of them said to me, well, why can't AI just do my assignments for me? And I started to tell her, well, you're learning, you're studying, you shouldn't really be outsourcing that to AI. So it'll be interesting to hear what your thoughts are on this question, Philip.
Okay. All right. So I think I would make a reference to the conversation I had with the University of the Confidential University student when I had a large broader conversation around media monitoring and intelligence. And so one of the key questions that came in, it's almost relating to this. And so for me, I would tell the student that or the person asking the question that it's very important you allow the human in you to explore, which is very important because why? Like I said, machines and AI would never stop in terms of their inventions being done, and also the constant algorithm that's being created. But you wouldn't allow the human in you to take the back seat because at the end of the day, the human needs to think in the place of context. And so when you allow you to become 100% machine efficient, it means that you wouldn't know when to cross the line or how to think between contexts. And just like what you said, Adedoyin, in the course of the conversation, that it's very easy to, or someone said it's very easy to determine and also to test when ChatGPT crafts a story or stuff like that. And so it's because of the fact that the place of human is lost in that conversation. A lot of people use ChatGPT, but they are very human about it, right? They're very human about it. And so I think ChatGPT, the value and also its positive impact is to make is to bring resource and also to make life a bit easier, but it's not the easiest part that will make human extinct. So when you keep using machine to do your assignment or to do whatever work that you have to do 100%, machine just gives it to you and you submit, and so it means that you're beginning to leave a shadow of yourself, because you can't even begin to tell what you can do as a person anymore. So your capability, your competence, your willpower, because that's what machine is doing. That's what AI is doing to us currently. It's beginning to take our willpower. It's beginning to take a lot of things. I told someone recently, why do you think you just pick up your phone and you don't even know why you pick up your phone? And you just go through IG, you just scroll all through, and you drop the phone and you take a deep breath all over again. And so for me, I think that's your willpower beginning to be taken away from you if you do not take control of that. So AI, so for us, when people hear AI, machine learning, they're beginning to think it's some sort of technology thing that you just have to sit down. Your mobile phone, your gadget, your device, those things that makes life easy for you, that has a bit of technology on it. We need to start bringing in ethics in even how to handle our phones, even how to use our phones, how to use a system, how to use the little gadgets around us as well. So for that student, I would say, try to be human in the course of the usage, and ensure that you don't lose your willpower yourself in that process as well, because that's what's going to happen to a lot of people in the long term as well. It's going to be as worse as COVID if it's not been taken into consideration. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Philip.
I want to quickly jump on that, ma.
Please jump.
Right here at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, I'm a PhD student. So there's something I noticed in my own department. I don't know how it works in other departments. You know, this local adage that says, since the hunter has learned to fly, to shoot, or rather, since the hunter has learned how to shoot without missing, the bird, will fly without perching. I think that is what has guided the mass comm department of this school. What they simply do now is that they give you assignments and then ask you that when you are done, please bring the plagiarizing test. That is, you submit your assignment or your term paper or your project, not just anything, whatever assignment you're being given. Submit it alongside a plagiarizing test, and they will give you a particular software that you're meant to use. So my advice for that college student is, please, that human touch is necessary. Make sure that even when AI contributes, you do the paraphrasing. Do not go and use this bots and the likes, because it still detects as AI. So make sure that you sit down to do the work, because I know that, yes, it started from my own department. I know it will sweep to other schools and other departments and the faculties. So make sure you sit down and do the job so you can be getting your A's. If not, when your lecturer says that indeed it was a machine that did it, but he's not a moron. I hope you know he's not existing in another world. So that would be what I have to add.
Thank you for sharing that, because that's what I was going to say, that you'll find that a lot of universities, you're submitting your paper with a plagiarism test or platform that will look through it. And to be honest, not even just for students, but for us as professionals, I think from what I'm hearing is, let's not outsource our strategic advantage. Let's not leverage AI to the point that we become lazy as well. We're able to do the intellectual thinking, as the topic of this conversation is AI enhanced, not AI outsourced communication. So it's going to be very, very important. This has been such a great conversation. I've really learned a lot, and we're at the top of the hour. I think we've answered all the questions. Oh, I see in the chat section that an IABC Africa conference for 2024. Yes, and Bosco, I can see that you've already secured a speaking spot. That's really amazing. Thank you. So I'm going to ask, if there are no more questions or comments, I'm just going to ask our panelists to share their final thoughts on the conversation that we've been having. We've said a lot, but what are the key takeaways that you want people to go away with from this webinar and to implement as they do their work as communications professionals? And I'm going to start with you, Bosco.
Look, I think the thing I want people to think about is that just when you think you know the answers, the questions change. And while we're talking about AI and we're talking about regulation, I've just included a link about the Harvard Business Review and how AI regulation is now, happening by governments in the European Union and China. You're seeing companies like Alibaba that were fined by the Chinese government. We're seeing all of these things change. But I just want to talk to you about the fact that while we're thinking about how to live in a world, in an AI-driven world, there's other things that are now changing the conversation. We have robotics that have been introduced into the workplace. We're seeing robotics in nuclear plants. We have Meta partnering with Ray-Bans using sunglasses for spatial computing. We have flying cars, and they're trying to figure out how to get these flying cars to land in different cities. We have floating cities. We have spatial computing. We have immersive reality. I just did a recent keynote for universities, and the universities are not ready to embrace immersive reality, which is the next realm of experiential education. So as much as we are having this conversation about ChatGPT, and even ChatGPT, the next ChatGPT is called Bard. It's powered by Google. Everyone's jumping on Bard. No one's talking about ChatGPT. There's GPT-5, So we have to keep up as humans. We have to evolve. So just when you think you know the answers, the questions are changing.
Wow. So I'm going back to equal parts exciting, equal parts scary. Thank you for that, Bosco. Philip, your final thoughts, please.
Okay, all right. So I think I'll leave the audience with this. So AI right now, it's the most existential debate, and also is a challenge for humanity. That's an honest conversation we should have. And the challenge for you, the challenge that humanity is actually facing, and it's also going to be a bigger challenge. It's going to be, like I said, it's as well as COVID. It's going to be bigger than climate change. I believe most of us are having the conversation of climate change. It's going to be way bigger than climate change, because I think that's the biggest issue, the pandemic, and also facing human, which is also happening to be the rise of AI. And so now I would advise that the conversation around AI and its ethics shouldn't stop at the small fractions among techies. It should be pushed to a much more larger conversation by the government, regulators, because that's the and I love when Bosco made the reference about the UNESCO creating a framework and also a guide as a starting point. And we should have a global and break it down into regions and locality, because different countries and also different regions uses those machines differently. And I think the government has a role to play in that area, in a very huge part in terms of education, training, and also the ethics of that as well. So I implore everyone, those that are within the government sectors and also those within the tech space, should be able to, so that's the conversation that we should be having. That's the conversation I'm having every time I have conversation around AI and also technology and machine as well. The ethics should be communicated. The ethics should be communicated. The user consent should be communicated. And also it should not just be communicated, it should be communicated clearly, so that those users can understand what their data has been used for. And also we should have a broader one in terms of its ethics. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Philip. And finally, Queen, your final thoughts.
Okay. I would say I do not know how many persons are here today, but I want to speak to our own industry. We as communication professionals, let it even start from us. This ethics, ethics, ethics. Let it start from us. You have an event, your CEO is not around, maybe far away overseas, and he couldn't send his should I say footage of whatever event, and then you decide to use AI to do some defect video just because you wanted something, some food for your YouTube, you want some food for your IG. So you decide to say, okay, let me even use AI and create some nice video of my CEO speaking. When in reality, you know that PR is all about truth. Are you being truthful? Are you being ethical? Of course, the plain answer is no. See, you might cheat a number of persons at the first one. Maybe the second time you might not go scot-free. One mischievous enemy of the company might just decide to take this video, subject it to some plagiarism AI tests, and it reads that it's actually fake. What do you think will happen? Of course, it will be leveraging your company in a very bad light. Now, by the time that video goes out there as this guy is actually this guy was not the CEO of that company. It was actually AI talking to us. And then what do you think will happen? It can give you some image crisis. If it gives you some image crisis, of course you'll be sacked. Okay? For even thinking something like that to start with. So I am saying let this sermon not just start from us, but let the implementation, the execution, let it start and continue with us and from us. So that would be my final thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And, that's a good way to wrap up that this topic that we're having has implications on organizational reputation, which we know it is very, very important for us to maintain that reputation and trust. Thank you so much, Philip, Queen, and Bosco, for the gift of your time today and for the very valuable knowledge that you've shared. You've given a lot of us, or everyone on this call, food for thought, things to think about, and go back to our organizations to relook, rethink, and figure out how to implement this data-driven and AI-enhanced communication in a way that's responsible and in a way that is ethical. So distinguished attendees, I'd like to especially thank you. Thank you for spending your afternoon or evening with us today. I hope that you will take these lessons from the webinar and begin to incorporate it in your work, because that's the important thing, making sure that the takeaways don't just end here, but then you take it away and use it in your work as a communications professional. And the conversation really doesn't need to end here. So please do engage with us on social media. The replay of this webinar will also be uploaded on YouTube, so you can also ask further questions. And if you have a colleague that has missed this, let's be our brother's keeper, please share it with them so that they also benefit from the information and the knowledge that has been shared. And finally, I'd like to especially recognize all the IABC members that are online, those from the Africa region, Asia Pacific, and all the other regions in the world. And of course, to our host, the IABC West Africa Interest Group, thank you so much for hosting this very timely and important conversation. Thank you to everyone, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. So it's bye for now from me.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.